God damn it, Activision. Anyways, we're gonna get into our next topic. Uh, not really breaking news, kind of breaking news. It's a little old, but we're gonna go into more of the creative side with this topic because this is the stuff I kind of want to do in a way. Uh, so recently there was an article, I think it was an IGN article that came out about the possibility or the works of Microsoft purchasing the well-respected studio of Obsidian Entertainment, and having them be an exclusive studio to the Xbox console. And I was talking to my buddy here, Jacob, about thinking about what kind of game Obsidian could possibly make and the different ideas that were coming up. I do want to note something. I saw, I believe, it was a Collins video. It was the one with the seven Star Wars games.
Okay.
And what you talked about, what I'm going to bring up right now, was he said the initiative, it would be cool if the initiative made an exclusive third-person kind of game for the Xbox, since the Xbox would want to kind of compete with Sony's Marvel game, the Spider-Man game. But then you brought up how Obsidian made Knights of the Old Republic back in the day, and I was like, they kind of already have some kind of history with the Star Wars kind of franchise, and it would kind of make sense if somehow Microsoft could pull that deal off. That could be the first potential game that we can talk about right now, is maybe an RPG Star Wars game. But I don't know what you were gonna say.
I would definitely would want to see that, even if it's. I would be down either way. Like if it was a new Star Wars game or if it was Knights of the Old Republic 3, that would be something that would really excite me. But the problem is that EA still has the license. So like EA
for now,
for the next 4 years, I think.
Okay.
So I would imagine that if, say, this deal goes through like before the end of the year, for example, I would imagine that Obsidian will get one game out before the Star Wars license is available.
Yeah, before they can take a crack at it. But that's a good way of looking at the history of it and kind of seeing like, oh wait, if EA isn't, doing this well or isn't creating good games anymore, I mean, they're still making good games, but making good Star Wars games where the fans are really, giving it, the credit it deserves. It would be interesting to see if, someone else gets a crack at it. And I think with the Knights of the Old Republic, it's one of the games you loved.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be interesting to see if they get a crack at it. And then if Microsoft can pull that off, it would be an exclusive next gen, obviously, or maybe the next gen, whatever you want to, however far down the line this game's going to be. But that would be an interesting game, an RPG Star Wars game. It's kind of like the similar kind of topic to when we talked about the Harry Potter leak and whatnot. The kind of like a game where, why doesn't this game have an RPG game? And it seems where people are getting the RPG kind of elements and kind of genre has gotten people to think like, why doesn't this world have an RPG game?
Is the Old Republic still going?
The
like computer,
I believe
MMO
so. Yeah,
thing?
not as strong, obviously, as like a World of Warcraft, but
yeah,
it's definitely a niche audience where it's mostly Star Wars fans probably playing that. It's kind of like
okay.
WoW.
I was just curious.
WoW has its own kind of lore and whatnot.
Yeah.
So it makes sense like niche people are playing those kind of games or that specific game. Because I remember playing it with our good friend Joshua Evenson back in the day. I think you played. Did you play it at all?
I did not know.
Okay.
Yeah, no, he did. Him, Aaron, and Josh both.
I played with Aaron too. So I remember playing with group text from Brandon. Playing games with that, and it was a decent game. It was a little weird. Kind of some of it didn't make sense, but you just went along with it because it was Star Wars, and you kind of were building this universe around the character you created, and I kind of like that. And if someone can do more of a story-driven, just good mechanics, basic thing like that, I think Obsidian could do that because we've seen that with what they've done with the South Park games, Knights of the Old Republic, and also they've done the Fallout games. So they definitely have I don't know if the DNA or whatever you want to call it to build a game of that caliber and that potential. Any other game I can think off the top of my head, I think the futuristic kind of genres are kind of gonna come. I think that's like maybe the next wave. I think Cyberpunk is. I mean, there's another game that was. I know Sony made that the recent game, Detroit. Kind of like that futuristic kind of looking game. I feel like those kind of games are going to be not the zombie thing, or like it's going to be a weird kind of new set of games that I feel that people are going to want to play. You get Starfield that's coming out with Bethesda. So you're kind of seeing this kind of weird direction that video game companies are going to go in with like their story, and I feel that they have more avenues, more possibilities, more ways of being creative, and also not being the same from each other, because that genre has kind of not been touched too much, I feel, with the futuristic kind of genre. And I think the Cyberpunk game is going to really open a lot of studios and probably studios' heads eyes, like, wow, we need to make a game like that, but in our own way. And I think Obsidian could probably pull that off as well.
Right. So that's what I started writing down here. So the way I was gonna kind of just go with this is obviously, so if they were to acquire Obsidian, it would be the 5th that they've announced since E3.
Yes.
So there was Ninja Theory. I looked it up earlier, but I already forgot like what the other ones are. They announced 4. Oh, they started the Initiative.
Yeah.
Then there was Ninja Theory. Yeah. And then there were a couple others. I think it was the We Happy Few developers they required. That was one of them. In any case, like, so adding the Obsidian to this, you're seeing now what Sony went through with the PS3, I think, where like there was a real lull in their games and their like ecosystem, and so like the PS3 was a learning period for them, and now they're like killing it with the PS4. And I think that like the Xbox One has been a huge learning period. You see, like, if you just look at how the Xbox One was being marketed when it launched to now, like, it's completely different. Right, yeah. So it's completely different now, and so I think every acquisition like this that Microsoft makes just makes me more excited for the next system, because I think I think Microsoft are really going to come out just with like all the guns on the next. That's what they're preparing for, because none of these people, obviously, the studio that put out We Happy Few put out a game because that game was coming out right after they were acquired. But all these other people, like, they're going to be working on something new. Mm-hmm. And so I'm really excited for that. I think the most likely thing is that they'll probably be all new IPs, at least probably the first round, or maybe like a something that I could see maybe an Obsidian doing something with the Fable franchise, because it's something that's been dormant since 3.
I don't want that.
You don't want that?
No, cool. Give it to a different studio. I want Obsidian to make something just on their own, but I know they really have been able to take older IP or different IP and kind of make it better, because they did the South Park games and obviously the Fallout. Like, people love New Vegas more than 3. I'm a person that just likes 3 because I like the setting a little bit more than New Vegas.
Okay.
But I think New Vegas, like, gameplay wise and kind of just the things they tweaked from 3 are just like, oh, I wish I did this in 3. But what was I gonna say? Nuts sacks. What are we gonna say with that?
Well, so what I wrote down here was basically the games, or like what could turn into franchises that Xbox needs to counter.
Okay.
So there's Horizon Zero Dawn,
okay,
which like obviously sold millions of copies, had incredible reviews. It's a third person. I think that game is RPG. I don't know. I've not played it. Where you're like leveling up.
Some would say it was the game of the year that year.
Some would say that. That's true. They also need to counter God of War. So that's like a very like story driven, also third person, but kind of like a personal story. Obviously they don't have, I don't think that Xbox has, I'm not sure really, but like I don't know that they have an old franchise like that to kind of like what made God of War was like obviously familiarity with the older games, but like how different it was also from the older games, and like they don't really have that available to them to make that sort of transition.
Well, the thing I think they already kind of countered with that with just the original set of God of War games, where they're really like gruesome, really nasty, really gritty, and a lot of blood.
I would say Gears was the counter
to that, and I think what they've done with the latest couple of games of Gears, since Gears 3, really, it's not been really story driven too well. I feel like the directions they went in aren't as good as what they did with the original trilogy.
Okay, yeah.
And
sure.
I feel if they can get some good writing in there, have the team work on the gameplay, obviously, that they want to get the mechanics down, but then they also don't try to like fix something that's not broken. It's kind of like they did with Halo 2 or Halo in general, but also just have something really strong like they did with the relationship between Marcus and Dominic.
Yeah.
And have something really like solid where you're just, oh, this feels really good. And then it also could be something new as well, new experience.
I think though that I would agree with you that like the original God of War trilogy was countered by Gears of War, but I don't think like I wouldn't equate God of War now to what it was then.
Yeah, but I think they can also reinvent Gears in a way as well. So
yeah, they could, and that's one thing that could happen too, is that you could see a studio or two getting a little bit of freedom with Halo or with like obviously like Halo Wars hasn't been doing so well, so like I wouldn't say that Halo is more than one genre at the moment, but it is definitely a franchise that's capable of being more than one genre. So like something like that, or like Gears of War. They are releasing a Gears of War strategy game because it's Gears Tactics. I think they announced at E3, and they also have that like weird Funko Pop game coming out. I don't know what's going on with that.
Garbage.
So God of War, Spider-Man, I have on here. Detroit, which is something that's like very. You were the one that reminded me of that when you brought that up. Like that game is like very highly decision based driven as far as like where the story leads.
Thank you, Walking Dead and Telltale.
Yeah, probably. And then I also remember the other one, the big one probably the biggest one that I didn't have on here that I remembered at the end was The Last of Us. So like that being just like purely, so like God of War now and The Last of Us being just like pure, and actually Horizon Zero Dawn, like pure single player, well written stories.
I think that's what the initiative is working on, probably.
Yeah, and it could be like, and I would expect probably at least 2 of the 5 to be working on something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like they just need, and then I also wrote down Days Gone, but I don't feel like the zombie genre is really in right now. I think it's faded. I think it's past its prime.
Yeah, I wouldn't. When I saw the game, I thought it was the stupidest thing I've seen at E3 that year, honestly.
And they have, is Dead Island an Xbox exclusive?
Dead Rising.
Dead Rising, that's what I meant. That's okay, yeah.
That's Insomniac, I believe, that made the last one.
Okay. So yeah, they're definitely, at least they have a little bit of a blueprint for the type of game that I think that they need to put out. Just looking at what Sony has seen so much success with over the last like 3 years or so.
Well, you look at The Last of Us, the Uncharted, and God of War.
I forgot about Uncharted too. Yeah,
it is like the over the top third person, like story driven kind of single player mode. They just need to do one game like that, honestly.
Yeah. You're right.
But Gears, they can have like a great story, and just throw in what they want to do in mechanics, and then just have another team just literally do the multiplayer, and you're done. That's it. You have a great game.
Yeah.
And then Halo, just go back to the basics. I've already heard good things already. I've heard from people that have said the new Halo game, they're gonna go back to the original trilogy and how it played.
Oh, okay.
So I think that's better off. I don't know. I think after Reach, it just was starting to go into like a totally different direction. Where
Reach for sure, the multiplayer for sure went in a total different direction with like all the armor abilities and stuff like that. Yeah.
And then just new franchises, man. It's just hook someone, dude. Because this Death Stranding crap doesn't even look good. Sorry.
Yeah. I think I would. I expect that most of these will be new franchises. I think. I wouldn't be surprised to see one of these studios, like I mentioned before, making something to do with Fable. I wouldn't be surprised to see one of these studios. I'll say I would be surprised, but I would very much enjoy if one of these studios was working on like a Quantum Break 2, because I think that game was. I will die.
Underrated.
I will die on that hill that game was criminally underrated.
Yep.
Except for the very ending. I'm sorry, the ending was really bad. But most people didn't even play the game to get that far, so that's not a reason not to play it.
I still think with whatever they do with Creative Assembly, I think not that they need to make a Halo game. Maybe they just need to make its own kind of RTS game. It'd be interesting to have an exclusive RTS game on the console. I'm not sure if that would bring in people or not console, but also on the PC.
Right. That's what I was going to. That was literally just what I was thinking right now is that it's also possible that they, with their connections with like the Play Anywhere thing where you can play your Xbox games on PC, it opens the door for strategy games.
I wouldn't want to play with PC players on that game, though.
Oh, well. But do you really want to play an RTS with an Xbox controller?
Well, if I have the option to play with the keyboard and mouse, then yeah.
I think it does already have keyboard and mouse support.
Okay, so then we're good then.
Okay. Because the controls are, I mean, they've never, that's the one thing that holds back strategy games on console is like the controls. Yeah.
So if I'm able to play that style of game with a keyboard and mouse, let's do it, dude.
If they could get, I'm a huge fan of XCOM and I'm a huge fan of Civilization. If they could get, if they could get a, or even I guess in RTS it would be, anything Creative Assembly. I would say if they could somehow pull in like an Age of Empires or something along those lines.
No, F all of that. You know why? Give me some Total War, baby.
Yeah, but I wouldn't. Total War is not going to pigeonhole itself. I guess actually.
No, I'm not saying. No, it's not an exclusive. You're just hey, you want to be on the Xbox?
It would only be on the X. You're right.
Oh.
That's right. Yeah. Okay, I see where you're going. So yeah, so like, they could offer console exclusivity to any of the major
RTSs.
Yeah. So like Sid Meier,
Dota, LOL on that crap too.
Right. Yeah, you're right. That's possible. That's with the Play Anywhere thing. You can tie it to your Xbox account or whatever.
Sorry guys, we're really pro Xbox over here.
Yeah, it's kind of honestly one of my biggest complaints against the PlayStation is just the controller.
Yeah.
I would never I'm enjoying playing Call of Duty Blackout right now. Would not want to play Call of Duty Blackout with a PS4 controller.
Another
controller is straight trash. Sorry.
I think a funny thing I saw of a post of the next consoles, like someone did like some prototypes, and the controllers basically like swapped. I was like, Xbox is not going in that direction. I don't understand where
they're not that stupid.
Yeah, they're not idiots. And it showed I think PlayStation's coming out with like a new controller that's basically like the Xbox controller. It's like a knockoff. Yeah. Oh, welcome. You're like 10 years late, but yeah.
Even Nintendo has a better controller than like the Nintendo Pro controller is a better controller than the PS4 controller. It's ridiculous.
But yeah,
how it's not the staggered stick.
But yeah, there's a lot of strategic moves that Xbox can make. I think what I don't want is if they make all these great moves and they get cocky and it works out and they get cocky. I just want them to keep going into that direction where you just bury. You just start either you take the lead and then you just bury them.
I don't know. It's cyclical, I think, because
that's a problem though.
Like Sony got cocky. They came out with a $600 PS3 and it blew up in their face. They dominated with the PS2 and the PS1. And they're like, oh, we're going to put out a $600 console and everyone's going to just come on their knees to buy our console regardless of the price because we're Sony. And they ridiculously blew up in their face.
Yeah. So, and I think Xbox
$599.99.
There's going to be a lot of big moves, but I would want to see the next consoles are going to be big to look at, I guess. We're going to see.
Probably only a couple years away.
Yeah. Because we're
get them 4K TVs.
We're getting into the talks of the Xbox and Sony or PlayStation just being apps. Because I've heard that conversation already. Because it's all going to be streaming or... Because like I just told you...
There were those rumors about the streaming Xbox.
They're streaming the Switch in Japan.
Oh, yeah.
The Assassin's Creed and then on Chrome browsers as well. Assassin's Creed in either China or Japan, I believe. So I'm like, oh, that's the future. That looks like the future right there. But Xbox wasn't wrong about when they talked about being all-in-one and being all digital and whatnot. So, I don't know, man. It's crazy. Crazy stuff. Crazy times.
I feel like we might end up, a console or two later, if there is a 2 generations from now or whatever, where we're going to look back at what Xbox tried to do and be like they were just ahead of their time.
Yeah.
Because I can't see a scenario where that's not where we end up. Is something along those lines. But like it for whatever reason it blew up in Microsoft's face and everyone's like, no, we want all games.
Well, Xbox has always been ahead of its time in a lot of things, so
yeah. So, but I mean, in this case, it cost them a generation, basically.
Well, we're getting into history, but before we do that, let us know in the comments down below what you think Obsidian is going to make in their next game, and what you think Xbox are the other studios that Xbox has taken under, and see what games they're gonna make as well. Let us know in the comments down below, and let us know your ideas so I can laugh at them.
Man, you're just all about just laughing at other people's things today.
Yeah, I want to hear some great.
That you're gonna laugh at their television shows and their movies that we didn't talk about.
What I want to see here is like this dude's like great idea. He's like thought of for just years of like an Xbox exclusive game, and just to like, that's just like that game, dude. What are you talking about?
Just blow up his world.
It's like, oh man, I've been trying to develop this game for 2 years. I'm like, that sucks.